Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. This is where we take a trip around the state of Florida. Heck, we even start with a fantasy trip out to Costa Rica to check on the fishing conditions, see what's going on with the bait migration, see what's going on with the weather, what the guys are catching and how they're catching them. This week, I kind of want to touch on, you know what, we're halfway through 2020. What fish have lagged a little behind so far? Because overall, I got to tell you, 2020 has been a very good year, both for catching fish and for days on the water. A lot of people that haven't been able to fish much have been able to fish more this year. Our trip around the state is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat, spay, and offshore hybrid boats? You want to visit youngboats.com. Okay, we're going to start out our trip by going to Paradise. Boy, of all the billfish destinations I've been to, and I've been to a few, I didn't enjoy any of them as much as I did Nosara, Costa Rica. That's where Nosara Paradise Rentals is, and my buddy Craig Sutton. Craig, are you with us?
Yes, sir, Captain Ricky.
Now, I heard a rumor that somebody with the Ministry of Health may have been caught on a fishing vessel last weekend. Is that true?
Yep, right down the coast from us, got caught. And the captain posted a picture of him on the boat fishing and put it on his Facebook page. Somebody picked up on it, and he had to resign his job this morning.
Oh, that's terrible. I can't say that it wouldn't happen to me, but it's still terrible. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
You can only go so long without fishing. Hey, Craig, you fish the same waters I do in Jacksonville, and you fish offshore a lot like I do. The question on my mind tonight is, what species have you been disappointed in as we come to the midway point of 2020?
Well, the spring Dorado run or mahi-mahi run for me was horrible. And it hadn't been any good in the last 2 years, really. My catches were a fraction of what I caught last year, which was a fraction of what I caught the year before. While our weight were decent, our numbers were way down this year. And I think they were way down for everybody in Northeast Florida.
Yeah,
now, my second species is the kingfish. I just haven't caught enough big ones at the right time. But I think that's an ongoing problem every year for me personally.
Yeah, but I mean, I hate to say it, but that's a personal problem. I mean, the numbers of kingfish overall this summer have actually been pretty good.
Yeah, we managed to slip up and stumble into a couple good ones here and there, but that's an ongoing problem. I'm never going to be satisfied with the size of the ones I'm catching here, the kings at least, but the Dorado have been a disappointment.
Yeah, they have been to me too. I think they have been to everybody. But as my buddy tells me from South Carolina, Don Hammond, the preeminent biologist with mahi, he said, listen, billions are going to be born every year. Some years there's enough food for 1%. Some years there's enough food for 2%. He said, if we hit a 2% year where only 98% of them starve to death, you're going to have plenty of mahi. So we just have to pray that all that sargassum we fished in this year held enough baby mahi to where next year will be better.
I'm waiting on them.
Me too.
I'll be there, though. I'll be dragging around there anyway, waiting on them to show up.
You and I'll meet on the same piece of bottom every afternoon about 3 o'clock. You know where that is.
I know it, but this last year you spanked me, Ricky. You absolutely spanked me.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but we did stumble into some pretty good fish last year. Craig, I appreciate the heck out of it.
Likewise, Ricky. Thank
you, buddy. Talk to you next week. Craig Sutton checking in from Nosara Paradise Fishing. For those of you that would like to know more about the ultimate vacation to Costa Rica, either give Craig a call at 904-591-2161 or visit fishingnosara.com. All right, let's start in Jacksonville by checking in with the Northeast Corridor and finding out what Captain David Borges is up to. David, are you with me?
Hey, Captain Rick, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fine, pal. I'm doing fine. Tell me what's going on in my hometown of Jacksonville.
Well, I'll tell you what, if it gets any hotter, buddy, we'll probably be boiled potatoes in this water. I'm telling you. Surf temperature today is at an 85.
Oh, man.
But the back country, we saw 87 to 88. I really think, and this, I've only seen this a handful of times. I haven't seen this very much, but I actually think the inshore water temperature we're going to see above 90 degrees this year.
Wow. I don't know that I've seen it hotter than that. That is That is way too hot, and that's
Rick. I think the hottest I've seen it is 92, 93 degrees. Now, we're talking back in the creeks, back in the shallower water and stuff like that. Surf temperature, ocean water's a lot cooler, but when you get back in these backcountry on these mud flats and on these shallow water, it really tends to heat up. And I'm telling you, it can really make for some tough fishing. And I think it has a lot to do with the amount of dissolved oxygen that's in the water. These fish just don't like this high temperature. They don't like it. The higher the increase in water temperature, the less amount of dissolved oxygen is in the water. And that is going to affect the fish. I mean, it's almost like putting us in a hot car, rolling up the windows, and seeing if you're hungry and you want to eat. No, you probably don't.
Right.
But you got to fish deep where the water's a lot cooler, the back creeks and the mud flats. I talked to guys that were coming in while I was getting ready to go out today, and they were saying, God, we saw fish along the bank. We saw big reds cruising the bank. Couldn't get them to eat anything. That's a lot of what I saw yesterday and the day before. So I actually moved my trip back today to the middle of the day so I could fish some of this deep water, low tide. And sure enough, we had 3 nice keeper reds and a pretty nice trout today. And the sea breeze up here makes a world of difference. The sea breeze has been kicking in around 10, 11 o'clock every day. We don't get that sea breeze until the temperature in the water and the land start to change, and that's what kicks up that sea breeze. And usually, we're by 10 o'clock, we're praying for the wind to start to blow, because between 7 in the morning and 9 o'clock, it is steamy, brutal, hot. But, Rick, I'm not complaining. I'm telling you, we've been working hard for the fish that we get. We haven't been getting the numbers, but we have been getting quality fish this week, and that's what I like to see. Some days you can go out and you can catch a 30-inch red after pounding the banks for hours and hours, and then finally you get rewarded with a real nice fish. And sometimes that can make all the difference in the world. But you just got to, like I said, I think that low tide, I think I'm changing the way I'm thinking. Last week I was saying I'm not going to be doing these middle of the day, late in the evening fishing trips because of the heat. I'm actually changing the way I'm thinking about that. I'm enjoying that sea breeze a lot more than I am that stale air early in the morning, Rick.
Oh, that 10 o'clock heat with the stale air, you're right. That's brutal. And, David, I've always felt like once the surface of the water gets chopped up a little, it increases the oxygen in the upper third of the water. Do you? Is that an old wives' tale, or am I thinking that?
Well, no, that's true. That's true. It does, the more surface action you get, that does increase. And I tell you what else increases oxygen in the water is rain, which is something we really haven't been getting a whole lot of up here in the last week or two. It's we've been getting showers offshore. We've been getting showers back inland, but along the intercoastal and we haven't been seeing a lot of showers, Ricky. And when that salinity goes up, temperature goes up, oxygen goes down, and it can, I hate repeating myself, but it can make for some tough fishing when these fish don't have the right amount of oxygen they need.
Yeah, well, if you want to fish in Jacksonville right now, you need a good guide, because if you don't understand the importance of salinity and oxygen and things like that in the water, Captain David Voorhees can teach it to you on a charter. There's no question. David, I'm wondering, the fish this year, we're over halfway through the year, and I feel like you've had a pretty good redfish year, and it seems like flounder are starting out pretty good for this summer. Tell me about trout. That's the other one of your big 3.
And I've been very disappointed in the trout fishery this year. It just hasn't really, I haven't seen the size and the numbers that, back in the days we used to see. But I'll tell you, back to the redfish and the flounder, something I am seeing a lot of this year. And it's funny because, the other day there was 3 or 4 guides that we were all getting off the water at the same time. And we sort of like to sit around the docks and, compare notes and see how everybody's doing. it seems like a lot of the guides are reporting some of the smallest redfish we have ever, we're catching 6-inch redfish, which is a 1-year-old fish.
That's a good thing, buddy. That's a good thing.
It is a good thing. It's a great thing. We're seeing a lot of little reds, which means last year must have been a really good hatch. That must have been a good spawn of fish last year because, we're really seeing a lot. And then on the flounder also, we're seeing a lot of small flounder, which I like to see that. But let me tell you, Rick, the trout fishery for a lot of guys has been very disappointing. We're hoping things will turn around with the new regulations. I like to preach to people and tell them, please release those big females that are loaded up with eggs. Let's get those fish back in the water. Let's get them spawning. Let's don't keep that one fish over 20 inches. Let those big female trout spawn. And I think it's going to take a while, but I think we can get the trout fishery back.
Yeah, I'm hoping you're right. I think you're right. I'm just hoping it's not all about water quality and it's something that we don't understand that's keeping us from having a lot of trout, because I think we're putting less pressure on trout because you guys, the guides, the anglers of influence, what do they call them? Social influencer on Facebook, have made such a campaign over not keeping these big fish. And I don't think there's as many people keeping them, David. I think it's time for that to start paying dividends.
You don't see the photos.
No.
You're right, Rick. You're not seeing those photos on Facebook, those big gator trouts and stuff like that. And I wonder about that. Is that good or is that bad? Or are we not seeing them because they're not being caught? Or with that being said, I just hope that, like you said, with water quality, I've been worried about that, Rick. I think there's a lot of things that can cause problems, going to come back and bite us. And, after reading some of the stuff in Florida Sportsman about the seagrass and the lack of bait and stuff like that in Central Florida, that's really, really something we need to be concerned about. What's causing some of this grass, this inshore grass to disappear. The quality of water, like I said, things I've been talking about for years about people check the salinity of the water. When we get these high salinities, these fish get out of that water. They don't like that high salinity. They hate it. I hope you're wrong about water quality. I hope it is something we can fix. But you know what? Time will only tell.
Time will tell. Cap, thank you for a great report as always. And people need to consider that. Normally you think, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I don't want to be out there. 1 o'clock in the afternoon quite often is when that cooling sea breeze kicks in and it actually gets cooler outside when you're on the water. So good fishing to you this week, David, and we'll talk with you next week if that's okay.
All right, Rick. Tight lines, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. Let's hop on 95, drive down south, pull over, and talk with our Central Florida reporter, Captain Jim Ross. Jimmy, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good this week, Rick. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing fine. Now, I know you haven't been out. I know you're still recovering from your back there, but what are you hearing? What's Justin had to say?
Well, I'll tell you, it's been a pretty interesting week so far this week. Justin's been out on a number of trips. He's filling in for me on the trips I can't run right now, and of course, running some of his own. We've got a good grouping of big tarpon inside the lagoon system right now. He's been jumping multiple fish daily on his trips. Most of the fish are running anywhere from about 55 or 60 pounds up to right about the 100, 110 pound mark. So there's some pretty good sized fish out there right now. But here's the other exciting thing that happened this past weekend. With the last day of red snapper was Friday. We had a little bit bumpy weather here, Friday, Saturday, and even into Sunday. It was a little choppier than what some of the guys would have liked. And actually, some of the boats kind of took heed of that and actually turned around instead of going out there in their 17-foot flat skiffs and their pontoon boats and, everything else that we saw running out the week before. I think people got enough of a butt whooping on that first leg of it that they decided maybe they'd use a little more discretion on the second weekend that we had a day available. But here's the thing that's really cool. Good numbers of red snapper obviously came in. We had a lot of cobia start showing up. Yeah, start showing up like last Thursday. The cobia started showing up. And through the weekend, it was pretty good. The guys out of Sebastian, I don't think got in on it quite as good as the guys out of Canaveral and the guys out of Ponce did. But quite a few good, really nice cobia, 40 to 55 pound class fish. And then a lot of those little ones, we seem to get a lot of little fish in the summertime. Like the main grouping of fish that's gone by in the spring and is probably, basking up there in the Chesapeake Bay sun right now, has gotten by us. But those smaller fish, those 28, 29-inch fish up to about 33, 34 inches. So just under the legal limit of 35 inches at the fork, getting a lot of those fish. They're following bull sharks and they're following sandbar sharks right now. Or anytime you're bottom fishing, if you're pulling up a snapper, you're pulling up a beeliner, you're pulling up a trigger fish, there's always the potential to have one of those cobia follow up. So make sure you've got a little jig or pitch rod ready just in case they do. But one last thing, don't gaff those fish. Most of them, even though they look bigger in the water, most of the time you find that when you gaff them and you put them on the measuring board, you're coming up a little short. And so now you stuck a gaff in a fish that you really didn't need to. And I highly recommend stowaway. Actually, I'm going to brand name them stowaway nets because they fold in half and they're durable enough to actually put cobia in. I've repeatedly put cobia in both of my nets, and just outstanding company that makes an outstanding product, and it fits into a small space because they fold in half. So I would highly recommend that anybody that doesn't have a net, if you're look into that particular company. But no matter what, just try to get something to where you can protect the smaller fish, because as fast as they grow by the fall time, they could potentially be legal cobia. And then in the fall run, when they're coming back down, you can actually bring them home and invite them to dinner.
Jim, I am telling you, the two fish that give me the most trouble when they get loose on the deck are cobia and mahi. And both of them do so much better in a big net than they do with a gaff in them.
Yep.
They don't thrash. They don't thrash around as much. They're not bleeding. They're much easier to handle. I'll do the same thing with a red snapper. If it's a red snapper and we got to get our hook back, to release her. If she's a big sow, just slide her in that net. Doesn't hurt her a bit. And no. I have long since. Now I break my gaff out when it's a toothy fish. Other than that, give me that big stowaway net. You're right, every time.
Yeah, and it doesn't, I'm just saying that that's a particular brand that I feel confident in recommending. There are other brands out there that have fantastic nets.
Yep.
But that particular one I know works because I've owned one of them for about 8 or 9 years. No, probably closer to 11 years now. And then my other one I've owned for about 6. Just fantastic product.
Real quick, before we get off that subject, I want to encourage people, do not net that fish and lift him from where you netted him. Net him, pull him over the side of the boat to where you pull straight up. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you want the hoop to be facing down. You don't want it to be facing out.
Right. If it's facing out, you can get yourself in trouble with that. But
with any net company's net, you're not going to lift a fish into the boat like that. You're gonna need to put the handle towards the sky and the hoop down, and then lift them in that way.
And
you're correct.
You can lift a 30-pound cobia easier than you can imagine doing that.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the best part about it. When a cobia gets on the gaff, the first thing he's done, he goes straight into "I have lost my mind" mode.
Yes, he does.
He goes straight into that mode. There's no gradual, easing into it. He's straight there. And most of the time they get off the gaff, or they beat you up with your own gaff because they're thrashing around so much. When you get them in that net, if they start to thrash, all you do is you lift the net up off the deck a little bit so that they're suspended and they stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can set them back down real easily and get that hook out. If they start thrashing again, you pick them back up, set them back down, and they stop. It's almost like laying a snook on his side over your hand, and he just kind of lays there. It's not normal for him, and it puts him at ease. It does something to where he doesn't lose his mind and try to just break everything in the boat.
Yep, you're right. What else is biting in your area?
Well, we've got some redfish showing back up.
Good.
And 2 places in particular, if you guys are looking for a trophy redfish right now, which is another great fish to put in one of those nets, Ponce Inlet is doing really, really well with big redfish this past couple of days, all the way from the inlet into the north and south bridges. And cut crab seems to be working really well. Now, there's tarpon in there too, so make sure you're not using small rods and then get outgunned, because the tarpon are feeding on the crabs that are flowing on that outgoing tide as well. And the other place is Haulover Canal. We've got a good run of redfish in the Haulover Canal right now. Big oversized redfish. And once again, they're feeding on crabs that are flowing through on these slightly heavier tides that we've got with this, that are associated with this new moon.
I see. All right. Well, that sounds like an outstanding report. I'm glad to hear about the cobia, Jim. I always wonder about a thermocline.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was kind of wondering about. Yeah. And I've talked to a couple of divers, and nobody's really spoken much of any dirty or black or cold water. So that's the other thing that's, kind of unusual about this particular cobia run, is that normally it's a triggering mechanism like a Labrador current, a cold water upwelling that sends them our way. And so far, we haven't seen that. So that's just kind of maybe we're going to even get a better run once we get that Labrador current.
Cross your fingers. Cross your fingers. Thank you, Jimmy. We'll talk next week, all right?
Always a pleasure to be on the air with you, Rick.
My pleasure, pal. We'll talk with you next week. Now let's swing it on south down to where it's always happening, down on South Beach in Miami. I know Alan Sherman's in charge of all the pretty ladies down there. How we doing, Alan?
I'm doing great. You always make me chuckle when you say that, Rick.
The mayor of South Beach, Alan Sherman.
South Beach is kind of closed down right now with all the stuff that's going on, curfews and social distancing. Not much happening down there, which is whatever it is. But the fishing has been going on. We've had a lot of rain this week, and when it wasn't raining, it was really hot. So, with those two things, you had to dodge the storms and the heat as well. But there's been snook, plenty of snook on the beaches, off the piers, and in the ocean inlet. The action there has been happening mostly in the early mornings and late afternoons, and then through the evenings. Large shrimp are getting a lot of those strikes, but pilchards also, and any artificial lure that resembles either one, bounced off the bottom or worked in that trough on the beaches, has been getting strikes by the snook. It's all catch and release, though. They're protected through the spawning season, so you got to let them go. And other than that, offshore, there's been kingfish, bonitas, barracudas, and some blackfin tunas, and even a few sailfish. Not red-hot fishing, but at times the bites came quick. The guys are mostly catching them on fresh ballyhoo or Spanish sardines. Live bait have been tough to come by, but if you have pilchards or threadfin herring or goggle eyes, those baits are getting strikes as well. The action's been anywhere from just outside the outer reef, 80 feet of water, on out to 300 feet of water. And the guys are slow drifting with the wind or with their engines, trying to hit the areas where their depth recorders are showing some fish below them. Once it starts to get kind of hot, though, probably around 10:30, 11 o'clock, that action has been slowing down. But the guys that stick it out, they've been catching some fish throughout the day. As far as the dolphin fishing, kind of forget about it. There's plenty of weeds from the reef as far out as you want to go. One weed line after another, big mats of weeds, but there's very few dolphins. So, if that's all you want to catch, go out and give it a shot. But the guys that have gone out there, most of them, the dolphin they've caught have been small, very scattered. It's almost like, why waste the gas when you can catch more fish inside?
While you're talking about dolphin, I've kind of had that on my mind tonight. I've been asking the guys, which fish in your fishery has been a disappointment? And I think you would agree with just about everybody we've talked to on the East Coast. It just hadn't been a very good dolphin year, has it?
No, we really haven't seen hardly any at all. I mean, I've been out a few times looking for them, and only once, I think, on the trips that I made in my bay boat did we actually find or catch. So that's quite a disappointment this time of the year. Usually in July, they're small, but they're everywhere, and that's not the case. Why is that? I mean, we have the weeds. There's plenty of sargasso weeds out there, plenty of floating debris, and there's bait underneath these weed lines. So where are the fish? That's a huge question. In the past, I've heard guys talking about the commercial fishermen, and the first thing you think about, I didn't know they had commercial fishermen targeting dolphin off of Miami. Well, it's really not happening off of Miami. It's happening in the Caribbean. These fish migrate, and before they get to us, sometimes they get caught and in huge numbers. So is that what's happening? I don't know. I think so, but I don't know for sure.
Well, the good news on dolphins seems to be is that every year is kind of a year class unto its own. they're so prolific and they grow so fast that the fish that you catch next year that weigh 10 pounds were born either next year or late this year. I mean, they just grow so fast. So if we hit a good situation for them where they've got plenty of food when they're juveniles and such, you know, we can back up a terrible year with a great year. But I think everybody's concerned because I know I haven't spoken with Don Hammond personally about this, but I know every fisherman I talked to has been quite concerned about it this year.
Well, we depend on these fish this time of the year. You know, it's so hot and they don't mind the heat.
Right.
If that fish isn't around, it makes it a lot more difficult to make a catch closer inshore because, I mean, the kingfish, the blackfin tunas, the sailfish, they're just not around in those numbers this time of the year. They've migrated out of the Miami area. Other than that, there's some bottom fishing happening out here. Wayne Kahn on the reward fleet has just been hammering the vermilion and yellow-eyed snappers. Vermilions you see a lot of, but you don't see yellow eyes in the numbers that he's been catching recently. And that fishing has been taking place in anywhere from 150 to 240 feet of water. Cut squid has been the choice bait, but it's good to see those fish around and biting. At night, the snapper fishing for muttons, mangroves, and yellowtails is still going on. You know, you got to pick a reef that the current's not too strong. But you can find these fish anywhere from 25 feet to 80 feet of water. So, you know, if the current's too strong to hit the bottom in 80 feet, just start working your way in from one reef to the next until you find a reef that you can get to the bottom with the lightest weight possible. The inshore fishing typically is slow this time of the year because of the high temperatures, and it still is. There has been a really good nighttime tarpon bite around the bridges on the outgoing tides. And those fish are going for large live shrimp. They're not the giant tarpon. These fish are anywhere from 30 to 60 pounds, but, you know, hook up next to a bridge piling, and you got your hands full trying to keep that fish from breaking you off. But that's happening at night. We have two other fisheries that are worth trying. That's South Bay, where there's been some bonefish and permit on the flats. And the best action has been on the early incoming tides, where that ocean water coming in onto the flats, a little cooler water and cleaner, has been getting those fish hungry. And then the freshwater fishing, peacock bass, those fish don't really care how hot it gets. And they're very aggressive this time of the year. So the local canals from South Miami all the way up to, almost Boynton Beach. Pick a canal, find a culvert or a bridge, and throw a hard plastic plug or cast a live shiner in the water. Chances are a peacock's going to eat it.
That's a great report, Alan. On the peacocks, are they doing well on surface lures even this time of year, or are you better off going subsurface?
No, the surface plugs do work, especially the ones that make some commotion. You work them along the weed edges, just on the outside of the weed edges, and those fish will come out from underneath them and jump on them. I like a Rapala X-Wrap.
Oh, yeah,
and
me too.
I have this, it's a number 8. And it looks like a freshwater trout. The colors, it's spotted. Mm-hmm. They jump on that lure. It's been red hot.
What's a big peacock in your canals down there?
Probably 5 pounds.
That's a fine
6
fish.
Pounds, maybe.
That is a fine fish.
In the Amazon, they fish for, you know, I'm not a peacock professional, but I, see the reports, especially this one guide, his name is Alan Zaremba, and he takes people to the Amazon, and they fish for peacocks that weigh 25 to 30 pounds. So could you imagine that in the freshwater?
No, I can't. There's a lot of things in the Amazon I have no desire to meet in a dark alley, I promise you. But no. I'll stay right here in Florida fishing for my 5-pounders. Thank you. Captain Mallon, as always, great report. We appreciate it so much.
All right, Rick. Look forward to talking to you next week.
We'll talk with you next week, Captain Mallon. Our thanks to Captain Mallon Sherman for a great Miami report. He's concerned about the lack of dolphin this year. I certainly can understand that. It was that way in my home waters, too, up in Northeast Florida. Let's swing down to Islamorada, which may be dolphin central for the East Coast, certainly, and check in with our buddy Nick Stanzik. Nick, how are you?
Hey, Rick. I'm doing okay. How are you?
Great. How's your week's fishing been?
It's been fair overall. Swordfish have been a little tough for me, but Captain Chase Bolton on my elbow with the water damage, my original Freeman, he's had a few good trips. He's caught him his last 4 trips in a row, and one big one, 275. So
Good one.
Good to see. I have not been catching him, though. I've been 4 or 5 trips in a row and haven't caught one. So I'm at the other end of the spectrum. But I heard you mention the dolphin fishing, and yesterday we actually saw one of the best catch we've seen at the dock so far this season.
Good.
That was encouraging. The real McCoy, he had 3 big fish. He had one that was just under 40. It was like 39.7, a big bull. Then he had a 36-pound cow, and then he had another bull just over 30. So 3 big ones, some schoolies. The Fearless had 25 fish up to about 10 pounds.
That's a new batch of fish. Those fish haven't been around. Nick, let me ask you a question. Have you seen a cow bigger than 36? I don't think I have.
That's a big one, no doubt about it. I mean, once they're 30 on the scale and bigger, that's huge for a cow. So that was good to see and hear.
Yeah, inquiring minds want to know, Nick, if Chase has caught his swordfish 4 trips in a row, are you losing your touch? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I might have lost it. It could be.
I'm sorry. I'm kidding. I didn't mean that.
No, it's the general consensus at the marina. You should hear the rest of the guys down there.
Well, they're all kidding you, I promise. You're going to be back on a streak before long. What have you heard from inshore?
My brother fished one day. So he had one tarpon. He had some snook and redfish. And then he fished with my dad about 4 or 5 days ago, and they had some really nice snook up to about 18 pounds and some real nice quality ones. That was good to see. And then Captain Charles Hertel, I talked to him. I think he fished 2 trips, and he had 5 tarpon bites combined, and they caught 2 out of the 5. So they caught a couple tarpon, lost a few. They had a juvenile cabera snapper and some other snappers and weird critters.
There's nothing wrong with that inshore fishing for July, I'm telling you. But back to the original question, yesterday notwithstanding, if you had to pick one fish for the first half of 2020 that you've been disappointed in the numbers of, what would it be?
It is probably one of the worst dolphin seasons, for Mahis I can remember.
Okay. Yeah.
We had a few good weeks of it where we had schoolies, and then the fish just disappeared.
Well, here's hoping they showed back up yesterday, and they're going to stay with you for a while now. I certainly hope that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, the wind picked up, and it had them going yesterday, so hopefully they stay around for the next few weeks or months or 2.
Let's hope. Now, was it rough today, or was it fishable?
It was rough. I didn't fish, but it was blowing 15 to 20. Some boats came in early on half days. A lot of boats have been doing well on mangrove snappers on the reef. They've been spawning, so a lot of boats have had 20 to 40 fish, whatever. But I didn't see the boats that came in. I left there about 11 o'clock, so I didn't see the offshore boats come in. I'm not sure how they did today, but I know they had some dolphins because I could hear a few boats on the radio when I was leaving.
I see. All right. Well, that sounds like an improvement, seeing that many dolphin, particularly that size. Well, Nick, as always, we appreciate it. We look forward to talking with you next week, if that's okay.
Yep. Give me a call, Rick. We'll talk to you then.
You got it. Thank you. Nick Stancic from Bud & Mary's, captain of the Broad-Minded. Now let's skip over to the 10,000 Island area and talk with Captain Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing fine. What's going on in 10,000 Islands?
Well, we're the dog days of summer have finally caught up with us.
Man.
I think I kind of jinxed us the last couple of weeks. We're having some tough windows, especially this week with a really strong incoming tide, real high tides in the daylight hours in the mornings, and kind of falls out in the afternoon, which is it's a great falling tide. It's just the thunderstorms have been upon us, by 1 o'clock all this week. So
wow.
You got you got really short windows to take advantage of it. And if the wind's holding up the tide a little bit, coming off the new moon here, so the tides are super high, and it's a hard bite when you're fishing a lot of mangroves, and a lot of shallow water, stuff like that. There's just so much habitat for those fish to push up into. Redfish and snook have been a little tough. The trout are there for sure. They're all over the grass flat, despite the water temperatures. The big breeder trout aren't there, but there's plenty of mid-teen size trout. They're readily taking artificials. You don't even have to mess with live bait, so that's good. The offshore bites, kind of the same deal. Guys are a little bit weary to get offshore just because of the inclement weather. And, it hasn't been horrible, but, we've had some really severe, lightning and things to that avail this past week. So the guys that have gotten out are just crushing it, though. So it's, but again, my rule, I just don't try to mess with the lightning at all. But The one good thing that we're seeing, and it's been totally a wintertime fish for us, but we're seeing a bunch of pompano starting to pop up, small little pods of pompano, and they're not the biggest ones by any means. There's some keepers in the mix, but we're seeing just a whole bunch of, smaller pompano, around Caxambas Pass and more in the urban areas like Marco Island and things of that avail. But that's really promising. I like to see stuff like that. I like seeing juvenile fish.
Isn't it awfully unusual for you guys to have pompano in July?
No, it is. It's definitely a wintertime fish for us.
Yeah.
And it's really odd. And they're not big. Barely 11 to the fork, and, probably one out of every 3 you catch is probably a keeper.
That's fine.
Yeah, they're super fun. And, maybe that bodes well for, future stock. It's just odd, and we've had a couple of head scratchers this year. Sometimes you just can't ask questions. You just got to keep a rod bent. So
yeah.
I'm all about it.
And every time we figure them out, they change the rules. We know that much. Hey, Steve, let me ask you a question that I've been talking about with all the guys today. And the East Coast sort of seemed to have a consensus that dolphin were just so disappointing this year almost everywhere. Over in your area, now that we're halfway through the year, what fish hasn't come through for you like you hoped it would?
For me and a lot of other captains, it was the triple tail this year. And, traditionally we're known for the stone crab season kind of coincides with our sight fishing opportunities for triple tail. And that's, kind of October through May. And, the first couple of months, you kind of have to let those buoys kind of marinate a little bit and get some growth on them. But come December, it's on. And it was. And mid-December through about the third week of January this year, we put some really nice fish in the boat. Lots of 10-pound plus fish with 2 fish over 17 pounds.
Ooh.
I mean, big triple tail. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of disappeared. And we weren't even seeing like lots and lots of short fish by any means. So we just weren't seeing them with a lot of consistency. And that's a big, target species for us. It was tough because you would budget your day around that and you didn't really have a lot to show for it. So we almost had to give up on it over time. And there were still some of us kind of running throughout all the way up to the end when they pulled the traps. But it just, you'd stumble on a keeper here and there or, a larger fish. But the numbers just weren't there this year. And I don't know specifically why. It was very odd for us.
The thing that worries me, to be honest with you, Steve, about triple tail is that the number of triple tail fishermen has exploded in the last 5 years. Would you agree with that?
100%. I mean, East Coast all the way around the state. I mean, it's become such a highly desirable fish. It's a visual fish as well. So that's also, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there. Once those big breeders kind of get a little bit shallower, where you don't have to venture too far offshore or on the crab lines to be able to find them, those fish are certainly vulnerable. Unfortunately, there's not a very big catch and release or even selective harvest concept with triple tail. It's very much at least on my coast, there's a big, catch and kill concept with those. And I think we're doing some right things as far as the 18-inch. We bumped up the size limit to 18-inch total length a couple of years ago, and that seems to work. But we're allowing 2 per person. I wish we still had 1. I wish that would be kind of cut down a little bit. 25-inch triple tail feeds quite a few people.
I'm with you, but before we get too carried away with this catch and release of triple tail, you have eaten one, right? I mean, you have eaten one.
Look, I get it, and I'm not. I'm lumping myself into that. Don't get me wrong. There's very few fish that I will keep myself, and unfortunately, the triple tail's right at the top of the list. But I don't know. I don't know if it's from over harvesting. I don't like to jump to conclusions. Mother Nature, has peaks and valleys, and I think we hit a little bit of a valley this year. So I'm hoping in the fall we see a little bit of a resurgence.
But I'm with you. I would go to 1 in a minute. 1 18 inches in a minute. I like the sound of that. Steve, I can't thank you enough for a great report. Can we talk with you next week?
Oh, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much. Steve Dahl from the 10,000 Islands area, Steve and all our action spotters each and every week are brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat, spay, and offshore hybrid boats? You need to check out youngboats.com.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalube marine engine oils.
What?
Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalube full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalube marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is the mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to his name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Now, let's swing around into Southwest Florida a little more and check out Snook Stamp Charters and find out what Captain Greg's been up to. Greg, are you with us?
I'm right here. Got you loud and clear.
Good. How's life for Snook Stamp Charters?
It's good. It's been a good week for me. I'll start though by talking about those guys who are just pushing the metal to the pedal because they want to get out there and get them red snappers before we shut it all down. That's going to happen here in just a few days. So honestly, the guys who have had the opportunity to get out there, they're definitely going out further than they were 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, but they're still catching some quality fish. Unfortunately, a couple of guys who did some overnight trips or 2-day trips found out what it's like when those storms blow through and had some good stories to talk about. But they did catch those red snappers. They were out in about 180 to 200 feet, which, in my neck of the woods, you know how far that is. It's a long way.
Long ways, yep.
A long way. They did come back, though, with some other really cool bycatches. A lot of blackfin tuna in their boxes, all the mangrove snappers and lanes and all the other extra stuff that you would catch when you're just messing around out there. And I did see one wahoo this week that got cleaned at the dock, which was really cool to see, along with some yellow eyes and stuff like that. So those guys who really went out there and did it hard, they went a long way, but they did well.
Greg, they've got to change how they're doing it, and particularly on the East Coast. We had a 4-day season this year. And the problem is this year we had slick, calm, beautiful weather. Everybody caught fish. Everybody's happy. But there's almost a desperation to some of these guys. And I made the point that if it was blowing northeast 15 to 20, there ain't a one of them would have stayed home. They'd have just beat their ways out there. That gets dangerous after a while, Cap.
No, I agree, Rick. In fact, I rarely get to go out there and play in that deep water. But when somebody does ask me, before I respond, the first thing I do is check the weather.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because rough weather's not going to keep them home if it's one of their days that it is legal to keep a whopping one snapper.
So the nearshore guys did do okay. The permits seem to be a little bit further out for us right now. A lot of these guys are hitting them in around 15 to 20 miles from where they're leaving from. There's a couple of small schools of permit that you're able to find that are closer. There was one school I heard about off of Sanibel that was actually within a few miles of the beach. But I think they were just traveling. They were just moving around. There's still quite a few big tarpon out there to be found.
along with all the other stuff that you're going to see cruising through those neck of the woods. Now, for me, and what I mostly do, obviously, is the back bays and the intercoastal stuff. I've been just targeting these juvenile tarpon all week. That's basically what I want to do. I want to get my people in the marina by 5:45, 6 o'clock. I want to go after these fish, and I want to be done before it gets too hot. It's just around 10 o'clock, it just starts to steam up, and those tarpon aren't going to be biting for us in this neck of the woods where they are during that time. Now, I did not fish this week except for one day for snook and red, because all my people were gung-ho and they were willing to show up super early. So the one day I did do the snook and the red, we got into some nice snook. Nothing crazy. I guess maybe the biggest one was 28, 29 inches, which, those boys over there on the East Coast and Stewart in your neighborhood are probably laughing at that right now. But, for us, that was cool. And the redfish, just a little smaller than what I would normally see around here. I don't know if we're just finally hitting that transition before we get to go for that October full speed again. But the fish seemed like they were a little smaller than they should have been. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 inches was about the average.
I gotcha. Hey, Greg, what fish has disappointed you this year? What fish didn't show up?
Well, one fish I can tell you, there's actually two total that I'll tell you. Certainly we had some water quality issues, and I truly believe trout are the most sensitive to that. Our trout fishing this year was poor at best, very difficult to catch trout in my neck of the woods. They started showing up south of us, they started showing up north of us, and they've moved into our area, but they're just not there yet. And then really the biggest disappointment for me this year, and I don't know if it's a water quality thing that just hurt the amount of bait that was available, but the pompano bite this year was not in fuego. I missed those days where I knew I could go out there and catch 20 or 30 pompano pretty easily, and it's a good time for everybody on the boat. And I just don't know. I'm kind of wondering if maybe the sand flea population kind of took a dip this year, and then hopefully it'll come back next year. The good part, Rick, is this week when I was moving around my motor really slow in the back bay, I did skip a bunch of pompano. So who knows? Maybe they showed up stupid late and they're just a little bit lost. But I'm not sure what happened with those pompano this year.
It's funny you say that. Steve Dahl said that they have shown up in his area this week.
There you go.
They're not big, and several of the guys on the East Coast talked about how good a pompano year it's been. So I think whatever your problem is, I think it's localized. I don't think it's population wise.
I would have to agree with you because in my last 8 to 10 years, I could wax those things when I knew they were there.
They'll be back. I promise you, they'll be right back to you. Cap, we appreciate your reports as always. Please tell me we can talk to you next week.
Oh, for sure. All right, Rick. Tight line.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Greg. Let's move on up to West Central and check in with our buddy Ray Markham. Captain Ray, how we doing?
Still hanging in there, buddy.
I got you. I understand a spaceship just went over my head. I didn't see it.
Apparently it did. It's one of the SpaceX shots that just went up, I do believe. The Falcon 9, Anasis 2, yep. I think it was called.
Yep.
That thing just went up about maybe 20 minutes or so ago. I could see it over here from St. Petersburg.
Well, I bet there's some excited people in that ship.
No, I bet there are. They're going like, I can't wait to get away from this COVID-19.
That's right. I'm taking my mask off right now.
That's it.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I've worn a mask all I want to. That's for darn sure.
They're leaving the good fishing, so that's a bad thing for them. But I tell you what, the guys have been hammering the red snapper and the grouper offshore this week.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting close to the finale here, and they are catching some whoppers. I mean, the stuff that I'm seeing coming in from anywhere from about 120 to about 180 feet, just phenomenal. I mean, 20, 30-pound red snapper, monster gags. And it's just a slaughter over there. I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing, but the report that I had earlier this week with the guys that were catching red snapper in the 100 to 120 foot range seemed like they were kind of starting to thin out. So they started going out deeper, and apparently this is what happened. Is you got a lot of people with fairly good weather over the last week for the most part, getting out early and getting it done and getting back in. We have had constant late afternoon thunderstorms rolling in, and they come in fast and leave fast, but they're coming from the east to the west. And I wouldn't want to be out there in the Gulf when it hits the Gulf side over there, because they have been pretty nasty. A lot of wind, a lot of lightning. I mean, a lot of lightning. Hope they're all careful. Haven't heard about any casualties, so and that's all good.
Let me ask you a question. As I get older, things always seem different to me. Does it seem to you like storms are stronger than they were when we were kids?
No, not really. I mean, because I was one of those crazy kids that probably ate paint chips and all that kind of stuff all behind the mosquito fogging machine out there. And to me, I used to run out and play in the rain. And of course, it didn't matter to me whether it was lightning or not. You know, I was pretty clueless as a little teeny kid, and take the bike and ride it through all the mud puddles out there. And so I don't know, when my mom couldn't track me down, but, yeah, I tell you, one thing that I am seeing, though, is because we have such warm waters in the Gulf, I think we're going to have some more issues with tropical disturbances and possibly even hurricanes. I hate to say the H word, but it seems like that's kind of the trend, the way things are going with things heating up.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong. Obviously, we've all watched the water temp, and obviously the hotter water seems to breed bigger storms. So far, you know, all's been quiet, and I'm mighty thankful for that. So get me through August and September, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, buddy, for sure.
Hey, Ray, real quickly, what fish that should have shown up in your area this year has been a disappointment to you?
Actually, our flounder fishing has been down, and it's been down for close to a year now, in my opinion. At least where I am, at the Tampa Bay area, from Sarasota all the way up to Clearwater is primarily the areas that I'm fishing. I'll fish a little bit north sometimes, and I maybe go up to Hernando or even Citrus County and dish. But typically, I used to be able to target flounder at will and at least catch enough to take home for dinner, you know, a couple of dinners. They just really hadn't been happening that much, and they've been more of a bycatch for me, and they've always been a bycatch for the majority of the guys here fishing, because they just either they don't target them or they don't know how to target them. But there is some specific things that you really need to do when you are fishing for flounder. Absolutely, number one is keeping your offering on the bottom, whether it's live bait or whether it's artificial, and just you got to work it slow. And I've been doing all the things I normally do, and we just haven't been catching numbers. And when we do catch them, a lot of them are undersized. They're, 11 and a half. And which brings me to the next thing. They definitely, if I know it's on the burner there to do something, but when that change comes, they definitely need to bump that up.
Yep.
A little bit bigger.
I want to see 4 fish 14 inches. I think that'd be just ideal.
It wouldn't hurt my feelings if that's what they did at all. No. I think that's a doable thing, and that's probably something that people who really do know how to target these fish could actually go out and catch a limit of if they did that. So I think that'd be good. I'll take it. I'll take one right now. One about 16 inches would be perfect for me. That's all I care.
Yes, sir. Right about now would be a good time for it. Cap, as always, we appreciate it. I look forward to talking with you next week.
Absolutely.
We're going to start swinging out into the Big Bend a little bit. That's where we'll find the mayor of Homosassa. We couldn't have a report without William Toney.
Captain Rick, how you doing, bud?
William, I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Not bad. Scrubbing rods and getting the boat cleaned up and all that good business. All the fun stuff at the end of the day.
Good. How did the Tremblay do today?
Well, we did shore lunch, and we did okay on trout. We had 6 or 7 and got a surprise 28-inch gag grouper and 4.5 feet of water on 10-pound test.
Hello.
I think he was a trout. He thought he was a trout, but anyways, we made good shore lunch, and just another regular hot afternoon down here that made the day.
Well, it sounds like you had a great day today. What have you been hearing? Obviously, the red snapper fishing, I would guess, has been very good.
Well, there hasn't been a lot of guys going out there because we've had a pretty hard wind flow here. So offshore has been kind of out of the question, and I haven't seen any of the guys going out. Big thing this past weekend was people scalloping and inshore fishing, but it's been middle of July slowness is what's been going on here. So kind of like when your dad tells you got to get up and mow the grass tomorrow, and you dilly-dally around till 11 o'clock in the day, and you get up and wish you'd never done it. You wish you would have got up early and this one had got it over with.
Yeah,
kind of like that.
Yeah,
yep.
I know exactly what you mean. William, when we talked and we had such a wonderful time, I so enjoyed fishing and scalloping with you, with my grandsons. You sounded like the biggest concern you've got about conservation over there and things having a bad year with scallops. Is that worrying you?
That's my biggest worry. And the thing about scallop in our area is people blame it on different things. My gut feeling tells me they're over harvested. And it's a fun family thing. And, you know, too much of a good thing can ruin something. Back when the heydays, when it was, you know, maybe I'm measuring it when it was like just jam up where you can get 10 gallons in 45 minutes and fill the whole boat. But now, you know, it's rare that you hear or see that someone actually limit out. Maybe 2 people, and that's why they went out and got their 4 gallons or something. And it seems that they go a little deeper every year. And then in July, you know, when they're a little bit smaller, it takes a lot more scallops to fill 2 gallons than it would in August. And, you know, you and I had talked about when we were out in the boat, if I had a choice whether I would limit the take or shorten the season. And what my idea, he brainstormed on it, and, you know, and just, I thought, you know, the Keys have a mini season for lobster. Why not do it like a whole week of 4th of July and shut it down till August and let them grow those extra 3 weeks? And by then they're a little bit bigger, so it takes, you know, less scallops to make that 2 gallon limit. And then by then, a lot of times there's less people out on the water. School started. Those who really want to do it are going to take the time off, and it would, you know, just take a little bit of the pressure off and keep it going. Because the only other thing I can think about just save them is just, you know, shut the season down.
Yeah, well, I don't think either one of us want to see a total closure, but
no,
I'm with you. I can tell you that that's the first time I've been scalloping in a long time, and it certainly was not as easy this time as it was last time.
No, and in fact, this past Saturday I fished, and we were coming back up the Homosassa River, and it's kind of like taking your life in your own hands. It is victory at sea, we'll say, and, you know, and everybody wants to have a good time and have fun, but sometimes you have to think about the quality of the trip. If you go out there and you're nervous the whole time, there's tons of boats, and you're not getting what you want, you know, what do we need to do to help this become what it should be? And, you know, no one has the answers, but we have to really thoroughly think about it and think of a way that in the future that this could be something that could be just the best ever. And that might be one thing, is shorten the season a little bit and, you know, let those scallops grow bigger and be able to spawn and, you know, and everything. So, you know, there's just a whole bunch of different things about it we could all think about and come up with a good solution.
Yeah, I am not by any means endorsing our current red snapper limits, but shutting down a fishery like we have sure can show us how effective it is when those fish aren't getting pounded on.
I will agree with you. Red snapper, you know, growing up in Homosassa here, you know, on the west side, and it's a long ride out. I don't ever remember our offshore captains ever getting red snapper like they have here in the last 5 to 6 years. It's become a thing where they are going out there and limiting it out in 60 feet of water, which maybe the vessels have gotten better. And, you know, the range of and all that, then, you know, grouper was always about 20 or 30 feet. But, man, it's like a given thing. You know, they go out there and some of our offshore captains complain about the, you know, snapper bite. You can't get anything down for the gag. So, right. You know, it has definitely blossomed. I'll put it that way.
Yep, you are dead on. Cap, as always, we appreciate your report so much. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
All right, bud. Have a good evening.
Take care. Now let's move over into the Northwest Section Way and check with our buddy Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Captain Rick, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. How's your red snapper season going? Starting to wind down?
It is starting to wind down. Last recreational day for the year will be Saturday night at midnight. So we get one more weekend day for the recreational guys. Federal charters can fish all the way to the last day of the month.
I see. Okay. Well, either way, it's pretty much over. How's it been for you? Rate it for me as a season.
As a season, I would rate the first half of the season in June as off the charts.
Okay.
Phenomenal. But as July has come and worked its way through, especially inside 100 feet of water, we're starting to see the snapper bite taper off. One of the things we contribute that to is the sharks have become an unbelievable pest in the area. I mean, you'll get one or two snapper off a hole, and then the sharks will start taking the rest. So we're seeing that. And in general, we're just seeing the impact of us fishing known spots.
Kevin, I got to tell you, that shark problem is statewide. You don't own that over there. I've never, ever seen more sharks. And they're taking fish that we've never seen them take before. I've never seen, until the last couple of years, I had never seen a shark attack a mahi before. Now they're eating them like crazy. I mean, they're eating everything they can find, and it's just, I don't know what the answer is, but I know that having an unfettered population for another 10 years is going to make a real mess of our fishery.
Well, as we've learned, or at least those of us on the water have learned, if you don't control something, it will control other things.
Right.
So by not keeping some kind of fishery on your sharks to keep a little bit control on them, they're going to start eating everything. It's just like triggerfish eating young snapper and snapper eggs and stuff like that. I mean, we're going to pay the price at some point by not allowing harvest of some fish. Now, I'm all for limits and I'm all for seasons and things like that, but you can't do what we're doing with our triggerfish, our sharks, and things like that. It's going to get out of hand, and the fish we're trying to save are not going to survive.
If I could give the councils one word, it would be balance.
Correct.
You've got to keep everything in balance. You can't let the red snapper completely overtake the reef like you have. You can't let the sharks, the Goliath grouper, the triggerfish, like you said, these fish, when you regulate everything except them, they become the only ones at home.
Exactly. And I'm going to say something that's probably not exactly kosher to everyone, but, you can't get grant money without a crisis.
Oh, you got it, Cap. You have nailed it there. I learned years ago when I first got involved in this project that if the Pew Foundation gives you a year's salary to do the red snapper project and tell them what kind of shape red snapper are in, the one thing you can't do is go back to them and say, they're fine, leave them alone. You can't do that.
Exactly. And it seems like our entire marine biology workforce is out there to save something, so they got to find something to save.
We need a good crisis. I know. Have you heard anything from inshore at all, Kev?
Inshore has slowed with the real warm temperatures. I'm seeing guys out there. There's still some triple tail coming off some pads off the beach. Heard of a few redfish here and there. But I will say this. Let me back offshore a little bit. The kings have arrived on the Panhandle.
Oh, good.
We are getting kings every day. They're not big kings. They're keeper kings. We're getting a few 30-inchers, but most of them have been legal and up to 30 inches. So the king bite's been great. From everything from flat lines to trolling. We even got one reeling up a bottom fish rig the other day. It hit it on the way up.
Let me tell you, a 28-inch king tastes a lot better than a 28-pound king does, too.
Oh, I guarantee you that much. Just like a 18-inch red snapper tastes much better than a 28-pounder.
I wish we could convince people of that. We've talked about that ad nauseum, I know, but man, I'd love to see us take the pressure off of those big sows, get guys to quit culling fish and watching a 12-pounder float off trying to get that 20-pounder. The best yield, and I've got this from the commercial fish house and my good friend that owns one, the best yield for red snapper is a 12-pounder. And
I believe it.
And would you believe, Kevin, that a 20-pound snapper has 18 ounces more meat on him than a 12-pound snapper?
Wow.
And the rest of it's all taken up with head and bone structure. And we need to get into our minds, just like we do with speckled trout, leave the big fish alone, Let's take the smaller, better tasting fish and ensure ourselves a healthy population going forward.
I agree. If we could take the money out of the fishery and make it all about the fish, I think we could do something.
You're exactly right. Cap, as always, we appreciate it so much. We look forward to talking with you next week, if that's okay.
Hey, we'll be here. You guys have a great week.
Thanks, Kevin. We can't leave Florida without going through Lower Alabama, good old Panhandle. That's where we'll find a guest podcaster tonight, Captain Chris Phillips. Chris, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Now, I understand the fishing out there has been pretty good for red snapper lately.
Yep, it's been good. We had a few days that were something I guess was a little bit off the beginning of last week, and the bite was a little tough, but it got better over the weekend. I guess that's why it's fishing. It can't just be the same every day. But overall, yeah, it's been good, and I would say the fishery has held on well. You know, we're just about to the end of it now. So overall, I would say a good season, and I guess this is our week to kind of wrap it up.
Good deal. Good deal. What's going on offshore besides snapper?
So we had our biggest billfish tournament up here this past weekend. I guess I would say biggest billfish tournament in the Northern Gulf is the Blue Marlin Grand Championship in Orange Beach. And seemed like, I guess, the blue marlin fishing was a little tougher than it had been over the past month. You know, a few weeks ago, a boat tagged and released 10 blue marlin.
What?
And then this past weekend, just 4 won. 4 fish were killed, not near the tag and release numbers that we saw out of a couple tournaments a few weeks ago.
Now, that day where the boat had 10 blues, were those all fish caught off the rigs, or where did they come from?
Yeah, they came from the rigs. You know, it ends up being more than a day. You know, I guess you're out there fishing for something like 2 days, you know, from the time you leave till you come back to weigh in. But that's the most I ever remember a boat up here catching. You know, we don't see those flag days like they see in West Palm Beach at Sailfish. We just don't see that up here. So, yeah, they were fishing rigs, you know, off Louisiana pretty much.
Wow, that is a fantastic
and
catch.
That was a Born to Run, a boat from Pensacola, actually.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with the boat. I sure am. And you say 4 blue marlin won the championship?
Yeah, 4 blue marlin won the catcher and release, and then 670 pounds or something, somewhere right around there, won the kill. I think people were just expecting to see a lot bigger numbers, where a few of the big name boats didn't even catch one, which you don't normally see.
Now, is that a 2-day tournament, or how many days is that?
Yeah, they leave around lunchtime on Thursday, and they have to be back Saturday evening.
I see. Well, that still sounds like some good fishing. What else were they catching besides blue marlin?
The 157-pound tuna won.
Hello.
And then, you know, regular wahoo and dolphin, 30, 35 pounds, that kind of stuff. But it sounded like overall fishing was pretty good. I think there was a little bit higher expectations for the blue marlin fishing as far as the numbers. Didn't seem bad by any means. I would say normal, what we see in a normal year, just not the craziness that we saw as we come out of the coronavirus shutdown.
Sure. Yep. What do you see in inshore?
Our inshore fishing here, when it gets this hot, it gets pretty tough.
Yeah.
There's some trout and redfish around. You know, you got to start early, especially for the trout. You know, pretty much limited to early morning and afternoon. Once you get in the middle of the day, it gets tough. But quite a few Spanish mackerel around. You know, one day they're here and one day they're there. So it's kind of a moving target. But it's a mix of inshore, offshore. But just outside of our path around the buoys, we're seeing a good amount of kings, which we didn't see last summer. We had pretty slow king mackerel fishing last year. So it's good to see a bunch of them out there. And I would say it's been good, you know, just about every day. Most of our you know, we have 7 inshore and nearshore boats. So just about every day, all of them are catching some kings.
Oh, that's real good. Hey, Chris, your trout in the summertime, is there many people fish for them at night?
Yeah, oddly, I don't see near as many people, you know, that do it at night as like 10 or 15 years ago when I went. You know, now I sleep at night, but back then I was going. And there just seemed like there were so many people who did it at night. You see some people doing it, but not near the popularity that I used to see. And I don't know why, because when you go, you know, they're everywhere. But yeah, I mean, you know, there's still plenty of dock lights, just as many as ever before.
Chris, I'm a lot older than you are, but I can tell you when I was a kid, there were lanterns hung off of every bridge. Coleman lanterns, guys would drop them down and you know, to just above the water line. That went on every night. And on weekends, sometimes the better bridges, you'd have a hard time finding a spot. I mean, it's crazy.
Finding a spot to hang your light.
Yeah, I think people have gotten lazy.
Yeah, so now we're pretty limited to, as far as I guess to take it another level to talk about landlocked fishing, and we're pretty limited right now because our 3 Mile bridge, which is our drive-on bridge, it's closed right now because of bridge construction. So they're building a new bridge next to it, so they have the fishing bridge closed. And then Fort Pickens, it's open, close, because it's a federal park, so it's following all kind of crazy guidelines right now. So we're pretty much limited to the Pensacola Beach Pier and the Bob Sykes Bridge.
Understand.
Which out at the Beach Pier, they're catching some kings and Spanish. It's been pretty good out there.
Cool. Chris, thanks for an outstanding report. And tell Tyler he can take another day off when he wants to.
All right, I'll let him know. He's offshore right now. Just before he went out of phone range, he assigned me this task.
Good for him. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I know we enjoyed having you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much. Hey, that wraps up our trip around the state for tonight, and I sure hope you enjoyed it. Gosh, no way to get around it. We're getting into the dog days of summer. Captain David Voorhees started it off complaining about the hot water, and the hot water theme seemed to go all the way around. But you know what? There were some spots with very good fishing. How about Nick Stancic down in the Keys and that tremendous dolphin catch that they had yesterday? That came out of the blue. It hasn't been that good. In the East Central area, Jim Ross talking about snook. There's been plenty of snook and offshore cobia. Where the cobia came from this time of year, who knows? That's why we call it fishing. Down in the Southwest area, they're all tied up catching tarpon. They're getting the little juveniles down there all the way up through the big fish. That's been very, very good for the boys. Ray Markham says that the kingfish and the Spanish mackerel are thick, and I was really pleased to see that theme continue all the way out through the Panhandle. It really looks like our kingfish population all around the state is on the upswing. Jacksonville just finished with a great 300-boat tournament where it took a 50-pounder to win it. So fishing on the whole for the middle of July has been pretty doggone good. Hey, do us a favor. Download the podcast for us, if you would, so you can listen to it anywhere. You don't have to be online. And share it with your buddy that can't catch fish. Listen, we've all got them. We've all got buddies that just can't seem to catch fish. Maybe they can learn something on the podcast that'll help them. I sure hope so. We appreciate you listening each and every week, and particularly subscribing to the Florida Sportsman Action Spotter podcast. It's brought to you each and every week by Yamaha, reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Hey, I'm going to get back to it in the morning. We'll be chasing Stewart sailfish. Hope you're headed out fishing. Until next week, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we'll see you on the rip.